sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.
All right, get ready. Because today we're diving into a whirlwind.
A whirlwind.
Yeah, a whirlwind of executive actions.
Okay.
We're looking at this CBS News article from January 20th, 2025. And it outlines over 200 actions that Trump plans to take.
Wow.
On his first day back in office.
First day.
It's a lot.
It certainly is.
200 is,
yeah.
It's
ambitious.
It's ambitious.
To say the least.
It signals a pretty dramatic shift.
Yeah, for sure.
Trying to make a big impact.
Right from the get-go.
Immediately.
Exactly.
So we're talking about immigration, energy, wokeness.
Quotes.
Yeah, in quotes.
Yes.
Even some potential, historical bombshells.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Where do we even begin with all of this?
Well, it's interesting that some of the first actions are actually pretty traditional.
Like what?
Appointing cabinet members.
Okay.
Things of that nature.
Right.
There's even a proclamation about flags flying at full staff.
That seems almost ceremonial.
It is.
Right.
Very much so.
Why would those be high on the priority list?
Well, because they set a tone.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
These seemingly small acts are a return to a more traditional approach.
I see.
A deliberate contrast, perhaps, to the previous administration.
Ah, so it's about optics.
Yes.
As much as action.
Exactly.
Okay.
And speaking of contrasts, the article also highlights how many of Trump's actions are directly aimed at undoing Biden's policies.
That's a big theme here for sure.
It is.
But is that even possible?
Well,
can he just erase 4 years of policy with the stroke of a pen?
It's not that simple.
Oh,
I mean, a lot of these reversals will likely face legal challenges and, frequent policy shifts can create uncertainty and instability.
So potential for chaos right off the bat.
It's definitely.
Certainly a possibility.
Okay, let's dive into some of the specifics.
The article uses the term sweeping crackdown when describing Trump's planned immigration actions.
Right.
That sounds pretty intense.
It is.
What's he talking about?
Well, he's proposing deploying the military to the border.
Okay.
Designating Mexican cartels as terrorist organizations.
Wow.
And limiting asylum claims.
Okay.
These are major changes that could have far-reaching consequences.
One of the most surprising things I saw was the mention of using the Alien and Sedition Act of 1798.
Oh, wow.
What's the deal with that?
Whoa.
That sounds like something out of a history book.
It is a very old law, dating back to a time of war fears. It allowed the president to deport non-citizens deemed dangerous and criminalized criticism of the government.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
Criticize the government.
Yeah.
Doesn't that go against the whole idea of free speech?
It's certainly a controversial part of the act.
Okay.
What's really striking is that invoking this in modern times is incredibly unusual. It raises questions about how far Trump is willing to go and what message he's sending.
Yeah, that's a chilling thought.
It is.
And it's not the only controversial immigration proposal.
Right.
The article mentions challenging birthright citizenship, which I thought was pretty much settled law.
Well, it is enshrined in the 14th Amendment, which grants citizenship to anyone born on U.S. soil. Changing that would be an enormous undertaking.
Okay.
Legally and politically.
Oh.
It would almost certainly end up in the Supreme Court.
And then there's the proposal to seek the death penalty.
Right.
For certain crimes committed by unauthorized immigrants.
Right.
I mean.
Applying the death penalty.
Yeah.
Based on immigration status. Is a very controversial idea, raising concerns about fairness and potential discrimination.
Yeah, for sure. So it seems like every single immigration action is going to face some serious hurdles.
Yeah. It's safe to say those are going to be major battlegrounds in the years to come.
Speaking of battlegrounds, the article also mentions a big focus on energy policy. Specifically, Trump wants to unleash American energy by rolling back a lot of regulations.
Really?
That's right. That's a key part of his America First approach.
Okay.
Achieving energy independence, even if it means pushing back on environmental protections.
So he's talking about undoing electric vehicle mandates.
Right.
Declaring a national energy emergency. And ramping up resource extraction. Particularly in Alaska.
That focus on Alaska is interesting.
Oh, how so?
Well, it's got huge reserves of oil and gas.
Okay.
But also a delicate ecosystem.
Right.
So this sets up a potential conflict.
I see.
Between economic interest and environmental concerns.
So short-term economic gains versus long-term environmental consequences.
Exactly.
That's a tough trade-off.
It is, and it's one that will likely play out.
In debates over drilling permits. Pipeline construction, and environmental regulations.
Your article also mentions a memo on tackling inflation.
Okay.
That feels a bit out of place with everything else we've talked about.
I don't know about that.
Really?
Rising costs are a major concern for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's true.
And Trump is likely trying to show he's taking that seriously.
I see.
There are a lot of tools at his disposal.
Like what?
Reducing government spending, raising interest rates, even potentially price controls.
Right.
Although those can be pretty controversial.
So a lot of potential solutions, but each with his own set of complications.
Exactly. It's not just about finding a solution.
Right.
It's about finding one that doesn't create more problems down the line.
Okay, we've covered immigration and energy. Now let's get into this whole wokeness thing.
Okay.
The article really emphasizes Trump's plans to push back on what he calls woke ideology.
Yeah. He uses some pretty strong language talking about eradicating it from schools and the military.
It's kind of a vague term, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is.
What does he actually mean by wokeness?
Well, it's a term that's become pretty loaded in our current political climate.
Right.
Generally, it refers to an awareness of social justice issues like racism, sexism, and LGBTQ plus rights.
So what's the problem with being aware of those things?
Well, for Trump and his supporters, the issue is that they see this wokeness as going too far.
Okay.
Leading to things like censorship, political correctness, and a rewriting of history that they view as inaccurate.
So it's a clash of values, basically.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
Right.
Yeah. It's about how we interpret the past, how we talk about the present, and what kind of future we want to build.
And the article details some very specific actions to address this wokeness.
Defining sex based on reproductive function.
Right.
Eliminating diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI programs. Even going as far as renaming facilities that were changed to honor diverse figures.
These actions are going to have a ripple effect across many different areas,
like
education, healthcare, the workplace, and beyond.
And it feels like the impact goes beyond policy.
It does.
It's symbolic, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's about sending a message.
Yes.
About what values are acceptable and which ones aren't.
It's about shaping the cultural landscape as much as the political one.
We've talked about all the potential backlash to these actions, especially around immigration.
Right.
But I'm curious about this wokeness pushback.
Yeah.
Isn't that going to be incredibly controversial too?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
These are hot button issues that people feel very strongly about on both sides.
Right.
You can expect legal challenges, protests, and a whole lot of debate in the public sphere.
So we've got controversy brewing on multiple fronts.
We do.
But there's one more piece of this day one agenda that I have to admit I'm really curious about.
Okay, what's that?
The release of historical records.
Oh. The JFK, RFK, and MLK assassination records?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a potential bombshell.
Like, I can't even imagine what might be in those files.
I know.
It's like something out of a conspiracy thriller.
These cases have been the subject of intense speculation and conspiracy theories for decades. Releasing the records could shed light on what really happened, potentially answering some longstanding questions.
Right.
But it could also just fuel more speculation, depending on what's in there.
Either way, it's going to be a media frenzy.
Oh, for sure.
I'm sure historians and journalists are going to be pouring over those documents
absolutely
for years to come.
It's going to be fascinating to see. What if anything comes to light? It's not every day that we get a potential window into some of the most pivotal moments in American history.
So we've got a president returning to power.
Yeah.
With an ambitious, even audacious agenda.
It is.
He's tackling immigration, energy, social issues.
Right, yeah.
And digging into historical mysteries.
Yeah.
What does this all tell us about what kind of leader he intends to be in this second term?
It's clear he wants to project an image of strength
and
decisiveness. He's not shying away from controversy. And he's willing to use executive power to push his agenda forward, even if it means facing opposition or legal challenges.
And he seems determined to leave his mark on the country.
He does.
Not just politically,
yes,
but culturally as well.
Absolutely. His focus on wokeness and traditional values suggests a desire to shape the American identity, to redefine what it means to be an American in the 21st century.
That's a pretty big goal.
It is.
It's hard to know what the long-term consequences of all this will be.
Right.
But it's clear that we're in for a very interesting and potentially turbulent next 4 years.
That's putting it mildly.
Okay.
And I think it's important to remember that these actions, as dramatic as they are just the beginning.
Right.
There's a whole lot more to come.
All right. We're back for the final part.
Okay.
Of our deep dive into Trump's Day One agenda. And, we've covered a lot of ground. From immigration crackdowns to energy independence. From wokeness to historical mysteries.
Yes.
It's clear he's coming out swinging.
Absolutely.
But now that we sort of laid it all out, we should probably take a step back and consider what could happen next.
Right.
How might this all actually play out over the next 4 years?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is, right? Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. Yeah.
But so let's try to put on our prediction hats, keeping in mind that the future is always uncertain.
Absolutely.
It
is.
What would a best-case scenario look like?
For Trump.
For Trump's second term.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, in a best-case scenario, his executive actions face few legal challenges and are implemented quickly. The economy booms, maybe fueled by that deregulation and energy production. He's pushing for. His immigration policies have their intended effect, and his social policies resonate with a significant part of the population.
So basically, he fulfills his campaign promises.
Yeah.
The country rallies behind him.
Right.
And he gets to implement his vision without major obstacles.
Essentially, yes.
Okay.
And with that kind of momentum and public support, he would have a lot of leverage to push his agenda through Congress, potentially reshaping the political landscape for years to come.
Okay, so that's the dream scenario for his supporters.
It is.
But let's get real for a second.
Okay.
What about the flip side?
Right.
What does a worst-case scenario look like?
In a worst-case scenario, the backlash is swift and fierce.
Okay.
Think legal challenges that tie up his agenda in court for years, creating uncertainty and maybe even economic instability.
Right.
His policies alienate allies on the international stage, potentially sparking trade wars that hurt everyone.
Okay.
And at home, social unrest escalates as protests against his policies turn increasingly volatile.
That sounds chaotic, to say the least.
It does.
A complete unraveling of his plans, basically.
Essentially, yes.
Okay.
In that scenario, his presidency could become defined by gridlock.
Okay.
Both domestically and internationally.
Right.
Leading to a decline in America's global standing and a lot of internal division.
So we've got the best case and worst case.
Right.
But it's probably safe to say that reality is going to be somewhere in between.
Almost certainly.
Right.
We're likely to see a mix of successes and failures.
Okay.
Some of his policies might sail through. Others might get bogged down in legal battles or face fierce opposition.
Right.
The real question is, which way will the scales tip?
And that's going to depend on so many factors that are hard to predict right now.
Yeah.
The courts, public opinion, international reactions, and, of course, any unexpected events that could come out of left field.
Exactly. That's what makes this so fascinating. But also so unpredictable.
Yeah, for sure.
We're talking about forces that are much bigger than any one person.
Right.
Even the president in the United States.
Speaking of forces bigger than any one person, I keep thinking about that final piece of his Day One agenda.
Right.
The release of those historical assassination records.
Yeah. What about...
what are the potential ripple effects of that?
It's hard to say for sure.
Right.
It could be a Pandora's box, reopening old wounds, fueling conspiracy theories, and maybe even leading to new investigations.
Wow.
Or it could be a dud, a bunch of heavily redacted documents that tell us very little.
Either way, it's going to be a major media event.
It is.
And it's likely to have an impact on how we view those historical figures and events.
Yeah, it speaks to a broader theme we've been discussing. This desire to re-examine the past, to reinterpret history, and to shape how those narratives are told.
I see.
And that can have powerful consequences in the present.
Okay, so we've looked at the potential scenarios.
Right.
The best case, worst case, and the messy middle.
Yeah.
But I think there's one more big question.
Okay.
You need to tackle.
What's that?
What does all of this say about the state of American democracy?
That's a question that historians and political scientists will be grappling with for years to come.
Right.
But it's clear that American democracy is being tested.
Okay.
We're seeing deep political polarization, a decline in trust in institutions, and a rise in misinformation.
And Trump's presidency.
Yeah.
Both his first term and now this second one.
Right.
Seems to both reflect and amplify those challenges.
I think that's a fair assessment.
Okay.
His aggressive use of executive power, his confrontational style, his willingness to push boundaries.
Yeah.
All of that has contributed to a more volatile and unpredictable political environment.
So where do we go from here?
Yeah.
Is American democracy in danger?
I don't think anyone has a definitive answer to that question.
Right.
But I think it's safe to say that democracy is a fragile thing.
Okay.
It requires active participation, informed debate, and a willingness to find common ground, even when we disagree vehemently.
It sounds like we all have a role to play.
We do.
In safeguarding our democracy.
Yeah.
Not just politicians.
Right.
But everyday citizens.
Absolutely. This isn't a spectator sport.
Yeah.
We all have a responsibility to stay informed, engage in respectful dialogue, hold our leaders accountable, and most importantly, participate in the political process.
Well said. And on that note,
yeah,
I think we've reached the end of our deep dive.
Yeah.
You know, we unpacked a lot today.
We did.
The actions, the potential consequences, the broader implications for our country and the world.
It's been a fascinating and thought-provoking discussion.
It has.
And I hope our listener has walked away with a deeper understanding of this pivotal moment in American history.
Me too. And as always, we encourage you to keep learning, keep thinking critically, and keep engaging with the world around you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's what makes a healthy democracy thrive.
Yeah.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have a ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.